Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I have both of the meditation books with me today. Oh my God, are we so excited? Okay, so let's look in here and see what the meditation books have said. Let's see what they have said to us today. Let's see what the universe is speaking to us today. It is November 21st. Okay, let's get right in here. November 21st. Oh, you know what? Yesterday I didn't read from the date. So I have yesterday to read from too, because yesterday I just like randomly opened it. Should we see what it says today? Let me be direct. No, I'm joking. It would be so funny if I pulled it to the one that I did yesterday. Loving ourselves unconditionally, May 25th. Okay, we're going to go back to reading the meditation for the day. Let's go in here and see what November 21st said. Well, yesterday's was wants and needs. Oh, that could be a really good one. That is something I have practiced so hard in the last couple years. Accepting our feelings was November 19th. Let's see what's before that one. Allowing ourselves to be nurtured. Grief and action. Let's see what today's is. These are all really long and all really good. Financial fears. Okay, well, maybe we'll go back. The magic of gratitude and acceptance is tomorrow. That'll be a good one. Okay, maybe we'll go back and do some of these other ones. Accepting our feelings and wants and needs. Let's look in Journey to the Heart really quick and just see what these are for the last. I can't believe I'm getting to the very end of the book. You guys, we're almost at the end of the year. It's crazy, isn't it? Okay, November 21st. Let's see what the meditations are. Cherish moments of solitude. I do. Okay, let yourself play was yesterday. Awaken to the storyteller within, live with unsolved problems. Oh, I want to read that one. I think that might be a good one. Let's start with living with unsolved problems. November 18th. Sometimes we need to live for a while with a particular behavior, problem, or situation before we're ready to change it. Sometimes we have to live with it so long, conscious that it's a problem but unable yet to solve or change it, that we can hardly bear it. We're fully aware that we want and need something different, but the situation still hasn't changed. The answer has not yet arrived. We worry that the situation will continue eternally and the problem will never be solved. During those times of living with a problem and the desire to solve it, we may long for the old days, those days when our denial system was intact and we didn't know what we were doing. If you can't solve it yet, if you can't change it yet, it's okay to live with it just as it is. Something is happening. The situation is changing. You're on your way to change. Trust that the waiting part of change is necessary. Trust that your desire for change is the beginning of change. Trust that each moment you are moving closer to the change you desire. Now, the reason why I wanted to read this meditation is because the idea of living with an unsolved problem, I think, is something that we have all probably experienced in our life. This idea of, like, you know, you have a problem, you don't know a solution to it. What should I do? I don't really know. Like, should I do this? Should I do that? You ask 15 people. And then you still, like, you ask 15 people and you still don't feel like you know what to do. Like, you know, in recovery, we're told a lot to pray on it. I have prayed on so many things that I woke up there's been a lot of things I prayed on where the next day I've woken up and I feel like, okay, I have my answer. But there's been a lot of things, and I don't necessarily know that is divine intervention or if that's just my head telling me something. But there's been a lot of things that I prayed on, and the next day I'm like, yeah, I'm just as lost as I was yesterday. I still don't know what to do about this, you know? And I think that's where I've kind of been forced into situations at time where I've had to live with the problem. No matter what the problem is, if the problem is a financial problem or a relationship problem or a friendship problem or a work problem or, you know, like, just, do you want to go to this party or event or do you not? You don't want to hurt somebody's feelings? You know, like, it's stuff like that, you know? And it can be very, very simple. It can be, I mean, I think sometimes I allow my head to spin over the more simple things than I do things that are super, super difficult. Those sometimes seem like the answers are glaring me in the face. And I think that's the difference. And I just don't want to take the action. There's a difference between knowing what action you need to take and not wanting to take the action. That's one scenario. That's different than absolutely having no idea, what am I supposed to do with this? I've had both of those situations. I almost think that knowing what you need to do with the situation and not wanting to do it or not being willing to do it because it's going to cause so much pain to either you or somebody else, I think that is almost harder than not knowing what to do and living with the problem. What she's talking about here is that when you live with a problem and you don't have a solution, sooner or later, the solution will work itself out. You will find your path and you will know what you're supposed to do. And I believe that that's true. I really do. I don't really love this analogy, but years and years and years ago, a friend of mine had gone back out and started using again. And I remember talking to another friend of mine about it. And I was like, I hope that, well, two different conversations I had. I said to my sponsor at the time that knew her as well, I said, I really hope that she makes it back into the rooms of recovery. And, I'm really worried about her. And, and he said, well, maybe that's not what God wants for her. Maybe God has a different plan and a different lesson for her. Maybe her way of getting sober is not through a 12-step program. And that was really helpful to me because it made me really realize that a lot of people get sober other ways. And then I was talking to a friend of mine, and this kind of changed my whole perspective, even though I had heard this saying so many times. I think that's the other thing, is that when we know a lesson, but then sometimes we have to put it into action in our own life or realize it for somebody that we know, the lesson takes on a different meaning. And so I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, the same thing. I hope that they make it back into the rooms of recovery. I really miss them. I'm worried about them and things like that. And we had all reached out to this friend. And my friend said to me, maybe, I don't think she's felt enough pain. You have to have enough pain to make changes. And I had heard that statement so many times before in recovery. But in that moment, it really resonated with me on a different level because I knew her and I knew her life and I knew her life had a lot of pain in it. And so on a different level, my pain could relate to her pain. And so I could see how in my life, major changes I had to make in my life, I had to sometimes experience enough pain to want to make changes. And I think a lot of this meditation is talking about that. I think this meditation is talking greatly about having to have had enough pain to want to make a change in your life, or having to be at a point where you say, no more, I stand up. I'm not willing to take the way that I'm treated anymore. I'm not going to take the way that I'm talked to anymore. I'm going to make a change in my life. And you can sometimes be very silent about doing that. You don't have to be loud and make your announcement and all that kind of stuff. I think sometimes we think that, a lot of my changes and a lot of some of the solutions that I've made in my life have been very silent. I haven't told anybody. I just, in my head, have said no more. And so I think that a lot of it is about when you've had enough pain, you decide what boundaries you're going to set, I think that's actually, as I'm talking about this, that's a valuable lesson I've learned as well. I think, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if I was going to set a boundary in my life, or I was going to make a change, or I was going to stand up for myself, or I wasn't going to let this happen anymore, I think I needed to shout it from the mountaintop. I needed to be loud about it. I needed to explain it. There needed to be a PowerPoint. Everybody needed to understand. I'm not that person today. I've gone through a lot where I've realized I don't really need to explain that to anybody. I need to understand it myself. And then that kind of evolves over time. And where I start and where I end up are not necessarily the same place. I might feel that strongly about it today, and by Sunday, feel completely different about it, And I have silently set a lot of boundaries. I don't even need to let the person know that I'm setting a boundary with that I'm setting a boundary. I think that's one of the things that we don't talk enough about. It's people will say to me, well, how do you set a boundary with a family member without hurting their feelings? You don't have to go to them and say, hey, Mom, I'm setting a boundary. Just want you to know this is where we stop and this is where, you know what I mean? You can set a boundary in your own head and say, the next time I'm spoken to this way, I'm just going to say, I have to get off the phone. Or the next time they speak to me this way, I'm just going to see that as a red flag. And when I'm invited to something, I'm going to say, you know what? This time I'm going to opt out. I'm really tired. It's okay. You don't have to explain every boundary you're setting with somebody. I don't really explain boundaries to people anymore. I set them in my head. I know where my boundaries are, but that doesn't mean that I have to explain them to somebody else. It's not my job to explain my boundaries to somebody else. And I know when I say that, somebody will say, well, yes, it is. How are they supposed to understand? It's not my job for them to understand it. It's their job to be on their journey to understand the choices that they made. It's not anybody else's job to explain their boundaries with me. And if I'm doing the best to work on myself and be the best person I can ask that person, I can say, hey, something feels different between us. Did I screw up? Is there something you want me to work on? Then if somebody came to me that I'd set a boundary with, I would say to them, yeah, my feelings are hurt. Let me explain to you, But usually by the time I set a boundary, we've had that conversation at least 5 or 10 times. There's no reason for me to explain it because you didn't hear it 5 or 10 times ago. That's why I'm setting a boundary now. I don't know, as I've gotten older, one of the things I've learned is in my personal life, I don't have to move loudly. I can move silently. And I don't have to explain everything I'm doing. I don't have to shout it from the mountaintops. I can just do it, I can just set a boundary, or I can just remove myself from a situation. It's one of the reasons why this year, one of my goals was asking myself, where am I putting my energy? That's a very conscious question that I ask myself on an almost daily basis about a lot of different things, no matter how small or big they are. I don't tell people in my life, I'm not giving you my energy today. I don't do that. You know, in my head, I might be like, is this argument really worth my energy? No. And then I step away and I might say something like, you know what? Like, let's revisit this later. I don't want to hurt your feelings. You don't want to hurt mine. Let's just talk about this later. That's me setting a boundary. I don't have to explain this is a boundary, you know? And if they say to me, no, I want to have this conversation now, I'll say, I'm not really in a place to have it right now. And I can turn and walk away. I can say, you know what? Call me tomorrow. And I can hang up the phone. I don't have to answer the phone again. I can set that boundary. I don't have to explain that to anybody, but I also don't have to give it my energy. I have given my energy to so many things that I couldn't even remember what that was 3 to 5 days later, let alone a year or two later. Gave my energy away for days on end to negativity and misery and sadness and anger. I'm not willing to do it anymore. It's not worth it for me. And I've shouted from the mountaintops my boundaries, and the people that I wanted to respect it the most didn't. So now I just set my boundaries and don't tell anybody. If they respect them, they respect them. If they don't, I don't give it my energy. And that's where I'm at today, you know? And what I've learned like from this meditation is that sooner or later, problems will work themselves out, you know? It's like, I think like, you know, I watched this show, Earth Abides, and it's based on this book, and I downloaded the book on Audible and I haven't listened to it. It's like from the 1950s. But it's a different kind of apocalyptic book because it's the ending of the world, but it's not like people attacking each other and whatever. The show is fantastic. And I watched it earlier this year, I think. And it's about just really what would happen if the world ended tomorrow, like the trees taking over, nature taking over, the animals and stuff like that. And what would it really look like for the remaining humans that were here? And I loved it because what you realize is if we are all gone from this earth, okay, the earth is going to continue to go on. It's going to solve its own problems and figure it out. And so if we stop meddling sometimes in our own problems, the problems will work themselves out. The answer will come to us. Then it's our decision whether or not we act on the action that is presented to us. And like I said, that's the difficult part. Am I going to take the action that's needed, that's presented itself to me? I think that's the harder part than trying to figure out the solution. The solution will come to us sooner or later. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. That was a great meditation today. Really got my mind thinking. So, and a reminder that I needed to hear. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.